having that particular energy in the room here for sure. And whether you have a sweetheart or not, I don't have the sweetheart, but I sure had a nice time enjoying the energy of the day and letting people know that I love them by sending little Valentines. I did send them on the email mostly. Did send a few in cards as well. But our theme this month then is the value of connective relationships, and the message today is developing dynamic relationships. And as we talked about in the previous weeks coming up, that we all are connected. We all have this, what I call a divine golden thread of core energy, of love, of essence that unites us all. It's invisible, we really can't see it, but we sure can feel it. And we absolutely know it's there. And it gives us a whole unity or a wholeness or a oneness of life. And that oneness, that unity, that wholeness is love. That love is that generating power that creates everything, that encourages everything, that always wants the very highest and best good for all of us. Now, we talked earlier in the month about the fact that we cannot give what we don't have. And so we're really developing that internal awareness that I am this love in expression, to develop that acceptance that love is what I am, and that it is infinite, it is giving. We talked about, we quoted Corinthians, love is kind and patient, and I like the really part in there where it says it's slow to anger. It doesn't say it doesn't get angry, but it's slow to anger. And so that is really what we are. One of the things we as humans have to remember, though, is that we have that human ego side of us that tells us that we're an individual, that gives us our personality, and that's all fine and good. It also, though, many times creates barriers between us because that ego likes to judge. It likes to compare, contrast, and many times it likes to condemn. It likes to make somebody right and somebody wrong, all those kind of judgments. And so I've been looking at the Marshall Rosenberg's information that he shared in Nonviolent Communication. How many of you read that? It's kind of an older book, but have you have knowledge of it at all? Boy, well, we'll have to bring that. It's got some fabulous information in it. But what he talks about is the fact that one of the things that I pulled from it earlier in the month was the fact that we shouldn't should on ourselves. That many times we get, I should have done that, or I shouldn't have done that, or you should, and it's a blame and shame type of a game that comes from the ego. Well, what Rosenberg is suggesting that all of those type of energies and comparisons and judgments are literally coming from a need that we have that is being unmet. And so he said, if the person we are judging happens to be ourselves, how many times do we do that? What we are saying is, I am not behaving in harmony with my needs. I am convinced that if we learn to evaluate ourselves in terms of whether or how well our needs are being fulfilled, we are much more likely to learn from the evaluation. In other words, he's stepping back rather than condemning. He's just saying, okay, what's going on here within me that I would really love to have satisfied, whatever need I have, and it's not being accomplished. Our challenge then, when we are doing something that is not enriching life, is to evaluate ourselves moment by moment in a way that inspires both change, number one, in the direction of where we would like to go, and two, out of respect and compassion for ourselves, rather than out of self-hatred, guilt, or shame. there's a big nuance. There's a major difference between looking at ourselves and knowing that, oh gosh, I could have done this better. Maybe for whatever reason, I responded in this way, or I didn't respond in a certain way. And if we can just stop and look at ourselves and what he calls it mourning. He calls it mourning ourselves, because we think, oh man, I let myself down. I didn't perform, or I didn't do as much as what I wanted to do. But he says what you want to do is just step back from that and be compassionate with yourself. We can't give compassion to someone else unless we are compassionate with ourselves. We can't be kind to someone else if we can't be kind to ourselves. As within, so without. So when we know that when we're judging ourselves, we can realize that judgment is coming up by looking at our emotions, our feelings. How do we feel? And we can look at ourselves and again shame and blame ourselves, like, oh man, I screwed up again, and be unhappy with ourselves. Or we can look and say, well, I regret that I did it that way. What am I to learn from it? Where am I going to go from here with it? Love is the immediate response to compassion, to release. I wanted to share with you a story that he told, which I think helps kind of summarize this bit of being in mourning and then checking out, well, what was my need really? Why did I respond that way? And what was really going on internally with me? And he calls it the lesson of the polka-dotted suit. He says, I'd like to illustrate the process of mourning and self-forgiveness by recalling a personal event. The day before an important workshop, I had bought a light gray summer suit to wear. At the end of the well-attended workshop, I was swarmed by participants asking for my address, signature, and other information. With time closing in on another appointment, I hastened to attend to the requests of the participants, signing and scribbling on the many bits of paper thrust in front of me. As I rushed out the door, I stuck my pen, uncapped, in the pocket of my new suit. Once outside, I discovered to my horror that instead of the nice light gray suit, I now had a polka-dotted suit. For 20 minutes, I was brutal with myself. How could you be so careless? What a stupid thing to do. I had just ruined a brand new suit. If ever I needed compassion and understanding, this was the time. Yet here I was responding to myself in a way that left me felt worse than ever. Fortunately, after about 20 minutes, I noticed what I was doing. Notice, awareness, first step. I stopped, looked for the need of mine that was unmet by having left the pen uncapped, and asked myself, what need lies behind my judging myself as careless and stupid? Immediately I saw that it was to take better care of myself, to have given more attention to my own needs while I was rushing to address everyone else's needs. As soon as I touched that part of myself and connected to the deep longing to be more aware and caring of my own needs, my feelings shifted. There was a release of tension in my body as the anger, shame, and guilt I was harboring towards myself dissipated. I fully mourned the ruined suit and uncapped pen as I opened to feelings of sadness, now arising along with the yearning to take better care of myself. Next, I shifted my attention to the need I was meeting when I slipped the uncapped pen into my pocket. I recognized how much I valued care and consideration for other people's needs. Of course, in taking some good care of other people's needs, I had not taken the time to do the same for myself. But instead of blame, I felt a wave of compassion for myself as I realized that even my rushing and putting the pen away unthinkingly had come out of serving my own need to respond to others in a caring way. In that compassionate place, I am able to hold both needs in one hand, to respond in a caring way to others' needs, and in the other, to be aware of and take better care of my own. Being conscious of both needs, I can imagine ways of behaving differently in similar situations and arriving at solutions more resourcefully, than if I lose that consciousness in a sea of self-judgment. Do you understand the nuance there that he's talking about? Because I know we all do it. We all, generate this self-talk of blame and shame, but if we can step back and think about, well, what's going on here under the surface? What is the need that was going unmet? He goes on to say, the process of mourning and self-forgiveness frees us in the direction of learning and growing. In connecting moment by moment to our needs, we increase our creative capacity to act in harmony with them. So if we can just remember to be kind and compassionate with ourselves first. I was trying to help somebody else. I was distracted. I was trying to meet other people's needs, and that's why I, did what I did. Bottom line, let me learn from it. Let me grow from it. I imagine I told you I'm taking another one of Reverend Martha Creek's coaching classes. It's called Infinite Potential. And I am so excited. She's going to be here in Alpine at the end of July 31st, August 1st and 2nd. So make sure you put on your calendar. She's going to give a workshop on Saturday, speak on Sunday, and then have Sunday afternoon workshops. So we're going to have this room packed because she is amazing. But so on the last call that we have these calls, what everybody throughout the country calls in on once a month. And what we've been doing is self-forgiveness work. And we've been writing in our journal, I, gay, forgive myself for, and then you name another person and write it 70 times 7. And so it's quite a forgiveness process. Well, one of the gals that was on the call was sharing that what she does is she has, through her Akashic recordings, does anybody know what Akashic recordings are? Akashic recordings. It's a line of, I don't know how you say it. Well, it's going back into your lineage, literally from soul to soul to soul, back in time, beyond this lifetime. And it's it's a way to bring up the lessons and things that your soul had previously dealt with. But anyway, so she says, this is a forgiveness prayer that I came up with through that process. And I wanted to share it with you. It says, if there is anyone or anything that has hurt me in the past, knowingly or unknowingly, I forgive and release it. If I have hurt anyone or anything in the past, including myself, knowingly or unknowingly, I forgive and release it. The second part of the prayer says, if what I am experiencing is not mine, may God, Spirit, Source, have a shield of light and love around me, and I release whatever it may be to the divine. The third part is, Father, Mother, God, Spirit, Source, we ask that this energy pattern soul be sent on its spiritual evolution for the highest good and mutual benefit of everyone concerned. Does it remind you of anything that we've talked about here before? It reminds me of Ho'oponopono, of that forgiveness process. It's a very simple 4-step method. I use it a 4-step method. You start with, I love you. If something comes up in your mind that you judge is less than, is wrong, I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. And that helps dissipate that energy. And the two remind me of each other. So what we're considering here is, if I'm going to have a lasting, harmonious, wonderful relationship with anyone else, it starts with me. It starts with forgiveness of myself. It starts with empathy. It starts with compassion. And that allows the love that we are to flow through, to flow out. How many of us have been around a person who wasn't a very happy person? They were angry. They were upset. Well, we know from the Course in Miracles that is a cry for love. That anyone that is acting out, so to speak, in that regard, is really crying for love. That there's something within them, they have that hole in the soul, so to speak, that is wanting to be comforted. And so recognize that. Be aware of that. If someone is acting out as in anger, or if you are, know that it is a cry for love. It is a request for love. If someone is bullying us, where are they coming from? I have to tell you that it's interesting because over the last couple weeks, I've had 2 examples come forth to me that talked about, 2 people told me some stories about people bullying them. One of them was a woman in my choir. Wonderful, I'm the most wonderful person in the choir. And she was saying as a young girl, she didn't remember why, but she remembered running home from school and all these kids were chasing her. They were trying to chase her down and they were upset with her for something. She didn't remember what. But when she got to the door and she got into the house, the mother said to her, what's happening here? She's out of breath and panting. She goes, I don't know, all these kids are chasing me. I don't know why. And her mother said to she said, you go back out on that porch and you confront them. You just don't run away from somebody. And she said, ask her mother, what am I supposed to tell him? And the mother said, you'll figure it out. And she said that the mother would constantly tell her that, you'll figure it out. And she said, I don't know if that tried to make me think or whatever, but she said, so I went right back outside. And I said, and what did you say? She says, I honestly don't really remember other than I probably just said, you guys leave me alone or something like that. I probably just said, leave me alone. And so she stood up for herself. And that was a lesson for her to not cower, to stand up for yourself. The other example that I had recently was a gal who is a caregiver. She had a fellow she was taking care of. Maybe somebody in this room probably recognizes this scenario. And he was cantankerous. And he would poke at her. I mean, he would, put her down. He would tell her she didn't know what she was doing. She was, da-da-da-da-da. And, it didn't feel good to her. She wasn't sure how to respond. And so she told the fellow that took over on the night shift what was going on. And he kind of observed it too. And he told her, he said, you know what? You've got to stand up for yourself. You've just got to tell him and share with him that, listen, I am here to help you. And what I am doing is here for your best interest. And I do know what I'm doing. And so she took his advice. She went back to the fellow. She shared these things from her heart. And do you know, it turned him around 180 degrees. From then on, he respected her. He listened to her. He recognized that she was doing a good job for him. And the reason I had heard this story was because these 2 co-workers, the older man, the elderly gentleman, had told the fellow that was on the night shift, you're in your 40s now, and you need to find a nice girl. You need to settle down and get married. You need to find a nice girl. And the nice girl that he ended up finding was the one that was on the day shift. And I know this story because I'm going to be performing their marriage ceremony come next month. But the example, the gist of why I'm sharing both of those stories with you is to recognize that sometimes we have to stand up for ourselves. Sometimes we have to be open and honest in you don't have to be in a horrible way about it. You can do it in a nice way that is strong, that is solid. Wayne Dyer's calendar yesterday, I don't know how many of you have it. Yesterday's message was, don't give up control of your life to others. People respect you more when you operate from a position of strength and self-reliance. We operate from that position of self-reliance and strength when we know what we are and we see that in the other person. When we know that we are no different from them, that we are equal in the eyes of love. And when we see that, and so that we can speak our truth with compassion, with an affinity towards one another. It takes listening. It takes deep listening. It takes time. It takes caring to develop dynamic relationships. I don't care if it's with the guy at the grocery store or if it's your spouse or your best friend. I was going through one of the books I have that has all sorts of quotes in it about all sorts of different topics, Through God's Eyes is the name of it. And I wanted to share with you some of the quotes that I came across. Some of the people, I have no idea who they are. It has their name here, but I don't know who Paul Tillich is. But he said, "The first duty of love is to listen." Nathaniel Brandon said, "4 of the most loving words in the world are, 'Tell me about it.'" Rumi, "Only from the heart can you touch the sky." Alexandria Penny, "The ultimate test of a relationship is to disagree but hold hands." And Stephen Covey, "The most important ingredient we put into any relationship is not what we say or what we do, but what we are." It all goes back to this number one, to this knowing that we are love in expression and allowing that love to shine forth through us, from us, unite us with others. That's what it's all about. And recognize that if anyone is down, anyone is being bullying or angry, recognize that it's a cry for love and give that to them. Know in that song that we sang this morning, how could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever know that you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you are connected to my soul. Namaste. Okay, we have at this time the opportunity to give.